Hello, hello, hello. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Effed Up News of the Week, a stream I've been doing on Sundays around 5 p.m. Eastern Time just to review some of the more messed up news stories that I've heard this week that maybe I haven't had a chance to cover in one place or another just yet. We've got a banger of a lineup today. I'll tell you what, we're even going to be talking about vaccine-related things. I know YouTube doesn't like it when I talk about vaccine-related things, so that is all the more reason right off the top to make sure you're a member of my locals. In fact, actually, impromptu decision, guys. So just to entice you guys all over into locals, I will actually be doing my first ever post effed up news live stream in locals exclusive, right after today's show. We're going to be talking about, I don't know how many of you saw it. I was actually on a Twitch stream last night debating leftists. I got tricked into debating leftists. I was tricked. I don't do debates. I was tricked. But I did debate leftists, and I want to talk about a few strategies that I typically employ that I find are really effective when you're debating leftists. And I used them last night on the Twitch stream, and I want to tell you guys about them. But we're going to be doing that exclusively in my locals community, kb.locals.com, right after this stream today. Now, locals is free to join. It is free. It is free. It is free. Christian asks if I have a link to that stream. I do, Christian. It is at kb.locals.com. The link is in. To the stream. Yes, I actually just posted the link to the stream, so you can go to my locals and find it. It was actually a good talk, to be honest. We talked about gender issues. It was fine, but I'm definitely going to be talking more about that later. Now, you can actually watch the exclusive stream later just by joining my free community. Like, you don't have to pay any money to join my locals. But of course, if you want to help support the work I'm doing, it is the very best way to do it. I understand some people like being YouTube members. Some people like giving in different ways. Honestly, guys, if you're going to financially support what I'm doing, locals is the very best way to do it. Because when you financially support me through locals, you're going to be unlocking all the features of locals. So it's $5 a month to become a supporter on the platform. That unlocks all of the features. You can also do it for $50 a year. You can also make a one-time gift. But regardless, the best reason to join my locals, whether you are a free or paid member, is that you know I'm never going to be canceled. I'm always going to be able to communicate with you. You know, I'm 1 week off of having a 2-week ban on YouTube where I wasn't allowed to post anything, even to explain. YouTube banned me for 2 weeks for a BS reason. So locals is always going to be the place where we can find that information. And I will be going live right after today's stream for additional exclusive locals content. All right, let's jump right into it. Now, I have to tell you, this story made me laugh so hard. It made me laugh so hard. I remember like finding this story or like reading it as I was laying in bed on Monday night, and I just couldn't stop laughing. So, you know, Texas has passed this abortion law. I am not in favor of the Texas law. I am pro-choice. I am pro-choice with limits. I believe first trimester with exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother, that sort of thing. I don't believe in going much beyond that. I don't believe there's much reason to go beyond that. I believe abortion is sad. I believe safe, legal, and rare is a pretty good standard. I believe the Democrats have gone off into crazy town on this issue. I am not in favor of a lot of the things that the Democrats are doing. I'm not in favor of women celebrating their abortions. I'm not in favor of women live streaming their abortions. I think that's really sick and twisted. It should be the hardest decision that anyone ever makes. But the fact of the matter is that at 6 weeks, many women don't know they're pregnant at 6 weeks for many reasons that men usually don't understand, even though they think that they do. So I'm actually not in favor of the Texas abortion law at all. However, I do not believe that necessitates cutting off trade. Can we just talk about the hilarity of just this headline for a minute? Portland to cut trade travel with Texas amid abortion outrage. Yes, I completely believe that Texas is going to be so devastated over people from Portland not wanting to go to Texas to eat barbecue. I know that Texas is just they don't know what to do with this revelation that Portland, Oregon doesn't like them. Let's read. Let's read. The city of Portland, Oregon announced that it intends to ban trade and travel to the state of Texas in response to the Lone Star State's new abortion law. I'm sorry, how can Portland ban travel to Texas? Like you go to the here's how you travel to Texas from Portland. You go to the airport, you get on a plane, you go to Texas. It's not that hard. It is not something that Portland can ban you from doing. Mayor Ted Wheeler announced on Friday that the city council intends to vote on an emergency resolution Wednesday to stop the city's future procurement of goods and services from and city employee business travel to the state of Texas. Why are Portland city employees traveling to Texas for business? That's not happening. I challenge that. I challenge the very premise of that. There is absolutely no reason for employees of the city of Portland to travel to Texas on business. And I strongly doubt that the city is procuring goods and services from Texas. I want an inventory. I want an inventory of every single thing that Portland is currently giving to Texas or buying from Texas, because I'm going to bet that it's a whole lot of nothing. The resolution will be in effect until Texas ends the law or it is overturned. It is not exactly clear what such a ban would look like. I'm sure that Texas is just devastated by the loss of employees of the city of Portland, Oregon, visiting their state and, doing whatever people do in Texas. City Legal Counsel is currently evaluating the legal aspects of this proposed resolution. The Portland City Council stands unified in its belief that all people should have the right to choose if and when they carry a pregnancy, and the decisions they make are complex, difficult, and unique in their circumstances. The new law, Texas Law SB 8, was signed by Governor Greg Abbott in May, went into effect last week after the Supreme Court declined to hear the case, blah, blah, blah. We already know about the law. And I think the law is kind of, again, there are a lot of problems with this law. To be honest, I don't care how pro-choice or how pro-life you are. There are actually a lot of problems with this law in real life. But, I don't think those problems are going to be taken care of by the state of Texas being boycotted by the city employees of Portland, Oregon. The law rewards private individuals for exercising surveillance and control over others' bodies. It violates the separation of church and state. I wouldn't go so far as to say that. It will force people to carry pregnancies against their will, the council's statement said. Portland City Council stands with the people who may one day face difficult decisions about pregnancy, and we respect their right to make the best decision for themselves. Is anyone from Texas in the chat? I'm just curious. Is anyone from Texas in the chat? I'm live streaming right now on Facebook, on YouTube, on Rockfin, on Odyssey. Is there anyone from Texas watching currently? And if there is someone from Texas watching currently, I would like your opinion on whether or not you are going to be crying into your pillow at night over the loss of the Portland City Council. Yeah, Justin's representing Texas. Yeah. And listen, man, I'm not, Texas has its problems. Let's just be honest. Like Austin is totally gentrified. I was attacked by Black Lives Matter in Dallas. I don't exactly have fond memories from Texas. But if I had to choose between the two, I would choose Texas every day of the week, because Texas, at least you don't pay income tax. And, yeah, Justin is crying. Justin is absolutely devastated at the fact that he will not have Portland City employees visiting his city and eating barbecue. Oh, Portland. Yeah, Samuel, I am on Odyssey. I'm live streaming on Odyssey right now. You can find me there anytime I'm live streaming on YouTube. Almost anytime. I'm also live streaming on Odyssey. Our motto is don't mess with Texas. Yes, you got a good motto, Judy. You don't have as good a motto as the state of New Hampshire, though. And we are actually going to be talking about New Hampshire's state motto a little later on in the stream today. It's funny because before before I came up here to do this stream, Victor and I were sitting down to eat lunch, and I turned on this season of Top Chef because I'd never watched it. It's completely over now, but I was starting with episode 1 from the beginning, and they were in Portland, Oregon, and the very first thing that the guest judge said is like, "We are the front lines of racial justice in Portland." And I was like, I yelled at the TV. I was like, "That's because Antifa is burning down your city. You are only at the front lines of racial justice because Antifa is burning down your city. This is not something to brag about." Portland. I'm never going to be able to go to Portland again in my life. Maybe not in my life. Maybe that's a little bit hyperbolic, but I actually don't feel safe going to Portland right now. And that makes me really sad because last time I was in Portland, I really enjoyed it. There was good beer, there was good food. I thought it was like kind of a unique, quirky atmosphere. Now, never again. Never again, sadly. Tune in, drop out. Thank you for the super chat. What was your take on George W.'s speech yesterday? Did you believe he was referring to January 6 participants when he was talking about domestic terrorists? To be really honest, that is a great question. I haven't watched his speech yet. I really wasn't watching a lot of 9/11 stuff yesterday, to be honest. It would make me, I mean, I'm sorry, like, he's one to talk. If I'm sorry, if W, and I'd be interested to know what people in the chat think of this, because again, I just don't have the reference for it yet. But if W was talking about January 6 participants as domestic terrorists, W needs to sit the F down. I censored myself there just in case people have kids around. But he needs to sit the F down. I'm sorry. That man started 2 unnecessary wars that went on, the last one for 20 effing years. He doesn't get to have an opinion on this, so far as I'm concerned. All right, that's Portland. Next up in our ventures into our dystopian reality, in the land where war means peace, freedom means slavery, Ontario schools hold book burning ceremony in the name of reconciliation. This from the Post Millennial. On Ontario School Board held a symbolic book burning to advocate reconciliation and support for Indigenous peoples. The board now regrets the move. One would have thought that perhaps someone on the board would have had foresight prior to holding a book burning ceremony. Now, I think it's interesting that they did it in support of Indigenous peoples. If you remember last week on Effed Up News, we talked about the stunning and brave college professor from Canada who stopped using capital letters in support of Indigenous people. She will only use capital letters in support of Indigenous people. So let's see what kind of lunacy happened here. On Ontario Francophone, I don't know what that is, school board held a symbolic book burning to advocate reconciliation and support for Indigenous peoples. They now regret the move, which received sharp condemnation. Thank God for that. Radio Canada first reported the flame purification ceremony by the council scholar, I don't know, this is like French, who burned some 30 books for educational purposes. The board, which oversees elementary and secondary schools in southwestern Ontario, says the books' ashes were then used as fertilizer to plant a tree. You know, there was I don't know if people remember this. So I am obsessed with the Twilight Zone. I have seen like and I'm talking like the old school Twilight Zone, like the one from like the 60s. I think it was the 60s. I have seen every episode of like the old school black and white Twilight Zone. I think it's great. Now, there has been a very recent reboot of the Twilight Zone, and it sucks. It's so woke. It's so bad. It's such a disappointment. But what a lot of people don't remember is in the 90s, they also did a reboot of the Twilight Zone. This is like a lesser known thing, but the very first episode in the 90s version of like the Twilight Zone reboot is basically a story about parents sending their unruly children off to re-education camp where they get made into fertilizer to plant trees in the front yard. So the last image in this episode of the Twilight Zone, this disturbed me so much. This is why I remember it. Like the last image is these parents they've captured their young troublemaking child. They've sent them off to re-education reform school, and the very last scene is them planting a nice tree of remembrance for their troublemaking son in the front yard using fertilizer that they made from him. I'm not making that up. Doesn't that sound a little familiar? The board, which oversees elementary and secondary schools in southwestern Ontario, says the book's ashes were then used as fertilizer to plant a tree. They literally took this from an episode in the Twilight Zone. Not the good Twilight Zone, but like the first sucky reboot of the Twilight Zone. We bury the ashes of racism, discrimination, and stereotypes in the hope that we will grow up in an inclusive country where we can live in prosperity and security, according to a video about the book burning. More than 4,700 across 30 schools have been destroyed or in the process of being recycled, Radio Canada reported. Lynn Causette, the board spokesperson, told the National Post that they formed a committee with input from many Aboriginal knowledge keepers and elders. They participated and were consulted at various stages, from the conceptualization to the evaluation of books to the tree planting initiative. So they had a whole flipping committee about a literal book burning. And no one spoke up and said, maybe this is a bad idea. Symbolically, some books were used as fertilizer, wrote Causette in an email. The project, entitled, I am not going to pronounce that, Give Back to the Earth, was intended to make a gesture of openness and reconciliation. Oh, shoot. Hang on. It was intended to make a gesture of openness and reconciliation by replacing books in libraries that had been outdated content and carried negative stereotypes about First Nations and other Indigenous people. The board constantly updates its school library, she said, with newer editions having positive and inclusive messaging about the diverse communities within our schools. So they are literally memory holing books. They formed a committee to literally memory hole books, and then they use those books as fertilizer to plant trees so that they could replace those books with more acceptable books with the right language that they all want to include in their updated library. We regret that we did not intervene to ensure a more appropriate plan for the commemorative ceremony and that it was offensive to some members of the community. Dude, like, okay, I'm sorry, but how does this happen with a committee of people? How do you literally get a committee of people in a room and you say, guys, I know what we're going to do. I've got it. I've got the plan. We're going to hold a symbolic book burning in which we're going to burn all the books with all the language that we don't like, and then use those ashes as fertilizer to plant trees. Who's on board? Who thinks this is a great idea? And no one speaks up and says, no, this is not a good idea. This is bad. This is a bad idea. This is not thought through. This is going to backfire in our faces. How does that happen? It happens when you infuse wokeness into every part of your organization, making it impossible to speak up against groupthink, because if you speak up against groupthink, that means that you are a racist. That's how this happens. When you literally ban and outlaw dissent as part of your organizational practice, you end up doing literal book burnings. This is what happens because no one speaks up and says, this is a bad idea. We need to do something else instead. Asked about the book burning, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau says it's not up to Indigenous people. It's not up to non-Indigenous people to tell Indigenous people how they should feel or act to advance reconciliation. Justin Trudeau just came out in favor of book burning because racism. On a personal level, I would never agree to the burning of books. But if they want to burn books, that's their business. That's their business. It would be racist to tell them otherwise. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. This guy, who's a conservative leader, says, "We don't burn books." He added, "We expose ourselves to history. We explain it. We demonstrate how society has evolved or must evolve." Aaron chimed in, "Reconciliation is important for all Canadians, and we have to have a system that does not discriminate. A conservative government is committed to reconciliation, blah, 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 blah." Yep, that's about it on that. They had a book burning. They had a book burning, and no one thought to speak up prior to the book burning to say this is a bad idea. Jared says, "I legit have questions for you about New Hampshire. A lot happening, but New Hampshire is looking like a place I will be moving." Yay, Jared. I'm looking forward to chatting with you on locals this Tuesday. Go support her locals. Yeah, guys, what Jared is talking about is for supporters in my locals on every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. We do Zoom calls where you can come and chat with me and other members of the community. We also do them on Thursday at noon Eastern time. Jared, another thing you might want to do is reach out to the Free State Project. And we can talk about this in locals on Tuesday. But if you reach out to the Free State Project, they're going to be able to help you and give you all sorts of information and help with moving to New Hampshire. I love living in New Hampshire. I think New Hampshire's great. We were like briefly considering moving to Florida. And then I started hanging out much more with the libertarians in New Hampshire, to be honest. And so I have no plans to leave. I think New Hampshire is great. I'm happy to answer any questions about it. And fun fact, we are the only state in New England that is not succumbing to Biden's ridiculous mandates, which we're going to be talking about in a second. But first, I want to talk about Judith Butler. Because apparently Judith Butler, one of the founding minds of gender theory and queer theory, thinks that we need to rethink the category of women. I was reading an article on like Vice today, which is always, don't read Vice unless you're doing it for like comedic purposes, but it was funny. But like all throughout this article, it was an article about sex and it was an article about like women in different sexual acts. And all throughout the article, it kept saying people with a vagina or people with like this part of their body. They would not use the term women. I was reading this thing going, man, why do you guys hate women so much? The woke left hates women. They hate, yes, Gene, birthing people. Judith Butler. It's been 31 years since the release of Gender Trouble. What were you aiming to achieve with the book? It was meant to be a critique of heterosexual assumptions within feminism, but turned out to be more about gender categories. For instance, what it means to be a woman does not remain the same from decade to decade. Oh, really? Because I had this strange idea that, like, what it means to be a woman is that you're born a woman. I have no issue with trans people, but, like, I'm sorry, trans women have a completely different experience in the world than biological women. I don't care if people are trans, but, like, it is not the same thing. I'm sorry. The category of woman can and does change. And we need it to be that way. Politically, securing greater freedoms for women requires that we rethink the category of woman to include those new possibilities. The historical meaning of gender can change as its norms are reenacted, refused, and recreated. There are fewer groups that instill gender stereotypes any more than the woke left. I firmly believe that if I was growing up today, if I was a teenager today, I probably would have been coached into transitioning by someone at my school. Because I was a tomboy growing up, man. I'm doing a panel with Deb Philman. Deb runs the channel The Reason We Learn. We're doing a panel next week all about women who grew up as tomboys. I was one of those women. I always wanted to hang out with the boys. I always wanted to play boys sports. I didn't want to hang out with the girls at all. I had short hair, or I had like some sort of crazy hair if I was, not, but like I had short hair. I dressed like dressed like a guy. Like I didn't wear girly clothes at all. I was wearing like t-shirts and jeans all the time, which I still PS wear today. Um, I absolutely would have been coached into being trans if I had grown up today. I really, I've thought so much about that. And it's because of people like this, who say, if you don't subscribe to these traditional stereotypes, then we need to rethink the category of women. No, stop stereotyping women. Just stop stereotyping them. Stop asserting that in order to be seen as a woman, you have to subscribe to certain stereotypes. That's not the way it works. So we should not be surprised or opposed when the category of women expands to include trans women. And since we are also in the business of imagining alternate futures of masculinity, we should be prepared and even joyous to see what trans men are doing within the category of men. I don't begrudge trans women, man. I think that if trans men or women, quite frankly, trans people feel more comfortable presenting as the opposite gender, I think that they should do that. I think that they should be treated with respect and courtesy. I do not believe in using the wrong pronouns purposefully. I do not believe in using the wrong name purposefully just to prove a political point. I believe that everyone should be treated with basic respect and courtesy. And this is the treatment that exists for gender dysphoria, is to live as the way that you feel most comfortable. There's nothing wrong with that. However, being a trans woman and being a biological woman are two different things. And that doesn't mean that one is better or worse or right or wrong or good or bad. It doesn't mean one is the ideal and one is subservient. It doesn't mean any of those things. They're just different. They're different experiences in the world. I have no idea what it is like to be a trans woman any more than I have an idea of what it's like to be a man. I have no idea. It is not a part of my experience. That doesn't make it bad. It doesn't make it wrong. And it certainly doesn't mean we erase the entire category of woman just because another category happens to exist. David Skidmore says one of the most interesting things I have recently seen on this subject points out that there is not the same thing going on with men. These people are destroying one patriarchy and creating a new one. I completely agree with you. The extremely ironic situation of trans people crying about people erasing their existence while erasing the existence of women with the help of feminist women. I agree. Listen, man, the world is a big place. Lots of different types of people can exist in the world. We should be able to coexist. We should be able to live peacefully. The cis people and the trans people should be able to live peacefully together and all respect each other and to show each other basic respect and courtesy, but not when you're trying to erase one of the flipping categories. This doesn't happen with men. They don't like, I think that that's actually a really great point. I think that that is a great point that David made. This does not happen with men. They are not trying to redefine the category of man because trans men exist. This does not happen with men. It only happens with women. It is the same with lesbians. Ariel Scarcella talks about this like all the flipping time. They are trying to eliminate the category of lesbian. I'm sorry, like lesbians exist in the real world. And I've seen so many stories lately of lesbians talking about how like all their friends are coming out as trans and non-binary. They were lesbians like 15 minutes ago and now they're all trans and non-binary. Now, again, if that's what people want to do, people should be able to live their lives however they want. I don't really care. But lesbians are a real thing and they should be allowed to exist. Stop denying their existence, trans activists. Jesus Christ. Let's see what other crazy things they talk about in this article. Let's talk about gender trouble's central idea of performativity. This remains a controversial view of how gender works. So what did you have in mind? At the time, I was interested in a set of debates in the academy about speech acts, performative speech acts that are the kind that make something happen or seek to create a new reality. When a judge declares a sentence, for instance, this doesn't make any sense at all. This is like word salad. Okay. Today's queers often talk about gender being assigned at birth. Your meaning here seems pretty different. Gender is an assignment that does not just happen once. Okay? It is ongoing. We are assigned a sex at birth, and then a slew of expectations follow, which continue to assign gender to us. The powers that are part of the apparatus of gender that assigns and reassigns norms to bodies, organizes them socially, but also animates them in directions contrary to the norms. These people these people are the reinforcers of stereotypes. They think they're like tearing down all of these boundaries. They think they're tearing down all of this stuff. These people are the reinforcers of stereotypes. Jesus Christ. I'm not reading any more of this. This is a long ass interview. But I might talk more about this in locals later because this was kind of one of the topics of the panel I was on Twitch last night. So, as a reminder, I will be doing a live stream exclusive in my locals community right after this to talk about the Twitch debate I had last night on gender roles, kb.locals.com. You can join me there. But for now, who wants to talk about vaccines? Well, not really, because anything vaccine related, you should check with the CDC, follow the CDC guidance. The CDC is your god as it comes to vaccines, so far as YouTube is concerned. But Rutgers is stunning and brave today. Rutgers is barring unvaccinated students from attending virtual classes. It's all about safety. It's about safety, really. They're attending classes in their own home, and they're not allowed to if they're not vaccinated. Let's read. I hate the New York Post website. There it goes. A New Jersey student has said he is barred from taking classes at Rutgers University because he has not been vaccinated, even though he is only studying virtually from home. Logan Haller, 22, told NJ.com that he has largely ignored the school's COVID mandate because all my classes were remote from his home some 70 miles away from the Rutgers campus. This virus is now so advanced that it can travel from this kid's house 70 miles to the Rutgers campus. Have we ever had a smarter virus in all of human existence? Haller has now been forced to miss classes that started September 1st and has been warned it could be weeks before a decision is reached on his application for an exemption to the vaccine mandate, he said. I'll probably have to transfer to a different university, saying he knows of at least one other person in the same position. I find it concerning for the vaccine to be pushed by the university rather than my doctor. Check with the CDC on all vaccine-related matters. The CDC is your god, so far as YouTube is concerned. If someone wants to be vaccinated, that's fine with me, but I don't think they should be pushed, he said. The CDC thinks differently. Check with the CDC. Saying he doesn't find COVID to be scary because he is healthy and not in an at-risk age group. I don't care if I have access to campus. I don't need to be there. They could ban me. I just want to be left alone. Isn't this the sentiment that so many people are experiencing right now? I just want to be left alone. Just leave me alone. That's all people want. Is that so hard? Apparently it is. Haller's stepfather, Keith, who has been vaccinated, told the outlet that he is dumbfounded at Rutgers' stance. I believe in science. I believe in vaccines. I'm highly confident that the COVID-19 and variants do not travel through computer monitors by taking online classes. Based Keith. He chose to remove himself from an on-campus experience so he would not need to be vaccinated. Now to be removed and shut down from his Rutgers email and online classes during the start of his senior year seems a bit crazy. Even the vaccinated can acknowledge that things have gone way too far. But for debate, contact the CDC and reference the CDC for all your vaccine-related questions. Rutgers spokesperson Dory Devlin insisted that the university has provided comprehensive information and direction to students to meet vaccine requirements through several communication channels. Not the point, Dory. Not the point at all. She noted that Rutgers policy differentiates between a fully online degree granting program and classes that are made fully remote, but part of the course where other students are on campus, as in Huller's case. Devlin told the site the staff continued to work helping students apply for waiver requests for medical and religious reasons, while conceding that they should expect a 2 to 4 week turnaround, during which time they will not have access to university systems. Once it is processed and verified, students are allowed to access university systems. How much you want to bet Rutgers ain't going to provide them a refund either? Yep. The CDC is my god. I am an atheist. Yes, so far as YouTube is concerned. That is the way. That is the way we have to play it. It's not my choice. It's not my choice to reference the CDC and all that stuff on every single article, but it gets even better, guys. It gets even better. Check this out. From the Hill, hospital to stop delivering babies after 30 staffers quit over vaccine mandates. So I think actually one of the most interesting things that we're going to watch play out in real time over these mandates is, listen, this could actually be the best thing in the world in terms of really creating more urgency around creating a new economy or a shadow economy for the unvaccinated, to be honest. Because listen, what's going to happen to all of these businesses when employees start quitting and they start having staffing shortages? This is the HR problem that no one has concerned themselves with. I don't understand why people aren't seeing this. If you are firing even, let's just say 25% of your staff, if you are firing 25% of your staff over their refusal to get a vaccine, that is a big effing problem. And it is a problem. It is even more of a problem in the reality that we're in right now, in which people like jobs are plentiful. It is not actually that hard to find a job right now. It's not. So you're telling me that in a time where it is a job seekers market, because people are so used to being paid to stay home, it is a job seekers market, and you're going to fire 25% of your staff or possibly more over vaccine? And you don't think that's going to have consequences? Because you aren't going to be able to fill those positions. That's not how it works. And that's what this leads to. This is going to lead to staffing shortages, not only at hospitals, not only in all other walks of public life. This is going to now, because of Biden's mandates, it's going to lead to staffing shortages across a variety of different industry. And they're not going to be able to fill those roles. And I don't know, man. I think this could actually be one of the most interesting developments. Let's see how businesses handle this idea. A hospital in upstate New York will stop delivering babies later this month after 30 staffers quit in protest of the facility's COVID-19 vaccine mandate. As a reminder, check with the CDC for all vaccine-related such and such. Lewis County Healthcare System CEO Gerald. Why? I can't take anyone seriously named Gerald. I'm sorry. I just can't. Announced at a press conference on Friday that Lewis County General Hospital will be unable to safely staff its maternity department beginning on September 25th. The number of resignations received leaves us no choice but to pause delivering babies at Lewis County General Hospital, he said. The resignations came after the hospital's 2 weeks ago revised its emergency regulations requiring vaccines for employees, taking away the option for a religious exemption. Medical exemptions, however, are still permitted. The policy change followed an announcement from then New York Governor Andrew Cuomo that all healthcare workers in the state must be at least partially vaccinated against COVID-19 by September 27th. Listen, man, this is going to be a big problem because nurses, there are already not enough nurses to begin with. And nurses can actually make a metric F ton of money, like traveling around and working in other types of positions. It is not hard to find work if you are a nurse. I'm sorry, it's not. This is going to start to become a problem. Texas was already experiencing this. Of the 30 employees who resigned from Lewis County General Hospital, 21 work in clinical areas. He has said that 464 individuals in the Lewis County healthcare system are vaccinated, a 73% vaccination rate for its employees. So, 25% of their employees aren't vaccinated. 30 of those employees have quit, and they're going to have to stop providing essential function because they're firing perfectly capable people. Because of these stupid mandates in which they're firing perfectly capable people. Check with the CDC for all vaccine related such and such. Listen to the CDC. The CDC is always right. The CDC is God. 3 employees have been approved for medical exemptions. 12 have said they plan to present a medical exemption, adding the hospital is still waiting to review the documentation. He warned that other clinical departments in the hospital are at risk because of the number of unvaccinated individuals working in those departments. Well, how much greater risk is the community going to face when you are not able to provide essential services because you're firing perfectly qualified people? But it gets better. It gets better. Because in the land of rules for thee, but not for me, members of Congress and their staff are exempt from Biden's vaccine mandates. Because, obviously, this is from Newsweek, President Joe Biden's new vaccine mandates for federal employees don't apply to members of Congress or those who work for Congress or the federal court system. Biden issued 2 executive orders on Thursday requiring vaccination against COVID for federal workers and contractors who work for the federal government. He also asked the Department of Labor to issue an emergency order requiring businesses with more than 100 employees to ensure their workers are vaccinated or tested on a weekly basis. However, Biden's order on federal workers applies to employees of the executive branch. The House of Representatives and the Senate belong to separate legislative branches, and the courts to the judicial branch of the federal government. Biden's COVID action plan, path out of the pandemic. Side note. Didn't Biden promise us that he was going to have this wrapped up within 90 days of him being inaugurated? Do you guys remember that? Biden was like, 90 days, we're going to be done. Biden lied to us. I had no idea. No, he didn't lie. He had no idea what he was saying because he has dementia. Path out of the COVID pandemic, published on the White House website, makes the effect of the vaccine mandate clear. The plan says, building on the president's announcement in July to strengthen safety requirements for unvaccinated federal workers, the president has signed an executive order to take these actions a step further and require all executive branch workers to be vaccinated. The president also signed an executive order directing that this standard be extended to employees of contractors that do business with the government. The New York Times reported on Thursday that the executive order doesn't apply to those who work for Congress or the federal courts, citing White House officials. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi said in a press conference on April 29th that the House couldn't require members to be vaccinated. So here is the thing. We cannot require someone to be vaccinated. That's just not what we can do. It's a matter of privacy to know who is or isn't. Oh, really, Nancy? Oh, really? It's a matter of privacy, you say? Medical decisions are a matter of privacy? You don't say. I can't go to the Capitol physician and say, give me the names of people who aren't vaccinated so I can go encourage them or make it known to others to encourage them to be vaccinated. So we can't. We can't do that. Pelosi's office reiterated that position in a statement to Newsweek on Friday, saying the speaker's April 29th remarks were referring to the institution in which she serves. She's saying she cannot force members to be vaccinated, which is true, the statement said. So, rules for thee, but not for me. Listen, so here's the thing. I really hope that anyone listening to this took advantage of the pandemic while you could, because there were so many opportunities to create a side hustle, to start something on your own. This more than anything else. And if you haven't yet started some sort of side hustle or some sort of business that will allow you, maybe not just yet, but in the future, to be completely self-employed, you have got to do that. I thank God every single day that at the start of this pandemic, I was set up with a business that I built part-time while I was working full-time over the course of years. And so I had my business completely set. I wasn't beholden to anyone. I didn't have to listen to anyone. I don't have to get vaccinated if I don't want to, because there's no one I'm not going to get fired if I'm not vaccinated. You should check with the CDC to make your vaccination decisions. I'm not a doctor. Don't listen to me. But if you haven't started getting yourself set up with your own business, your own side hustle, your own way to make money, you need to start now. Because, did anyone see Dave Smith? Maybe, hang on, let me pull this up real quick. This is actually important. There was a great clip of Dave Smith on Twitter this morning. I tweeted it. I'm just going to pull it up real quick. Oh, Jesus Christ. Hang on. Gotta pull it up. I have to pull it up in Chrome because Chrome is the only place where it will let me play the audio. Okay. Let me stop share for a second. Share. We're going to watch this together because this is actually amazing. Okay.
Predicated.
Check this out.
And you now lose your basic fundamental human freedoms because he doesn't like the decision that you made. I will say this. If you believe that your basic liberties are predicated on the consumption of a product from a giant pharmaceutical company, you are a fascist. And I mean that to everyone on the panel, everyone listening at home. If you believe that someone does not deserve basic liberties unless they consume a product. No, actually, I do.
What is fascism?
Why don't you define it for me?
Yeah, what is fascism?
Define it.
No, we're not going to get into a definitional
war
here.
Hold on. You just told me I don't know what fascism is.
Which means you do know what it is. Excuse me.
Since I don't know what fascism is, can you tell me how Mussolini defined it? He defined it as a merger between corporation and state. These are not businesses deciding that they don't want customers in. This is the government telling businesses that they have no choice. Yeah. This is discrimination under the law. And it's interesting that these so-called progressives don't care that this is going to disproportionately affect minorities and immigrants. Oh, all of a sudden, that's not an issue, right? Having to show ID for voting, that's fascism, right? But this isn't a problem.
I want to bring Chris in. We've got 30 seconds.
I don't know what fascism is.
Bam. Start your own side hustles, guys. When your workplace can try to force you to make medical decisions, that's when you have to get an exit strategy. No one can create that exit strategy that's not you. It is perfectly possible. We now live in an environment where it is more accessible than it has ever been to start a bit. You can make money doing almost anything. I know a guy who started a window washing business because he used to be in the corporate world, wore a suit and tie to work every day, hated it, went out on his own, just started washing windows on those big, the big sky, the ones where they have to rappel down the sides of the buildings. He started doing that. Eventually he started his own business doing that. Like someone says in the chat, I should become a dog walker. Yeah, You can make money doing that. You can start a dog walking business. I used to joke with Victor all the time. I was like, I just want to start a doggy daycare. That's all I want to do. But we live in a reality right now where it is completely accessible to start your own business, to make money in certain ways. You're not going to be able to do it as a full-time job right off the bat. You have to work for it. You have to hustle. You have to build it up. But any person can do this. And if you haven't started doing it yet, if you haven't figured out what you want to do, then now is the time to do it. So a couple more things. These aren't so much news stories as just kind of, things I want us to think about in terms of the speech that Biden gave this past week. And this is just a quote from Unwokeable on Twitter. It's this person's handle is ACS against CRT. And I really like a lot of their tweets. And they tweeted out this Jefferson quote from July 6, 1775, retweeting this quote from Biden, "Our patience is wearing thin for the unvaccinated." This is from Thomas Jefferson. "We have counted the cost of this contest and find nothing so dreadful as voluntary slavery. Honor, justice, and humanity forbid us tamely to surrender that freedom which we received from our gallant ancestors, and which our innocent posterity have a right to receive from us. We cannot endure the infamy and guilt of resigning succeeding generations to the wretchedness which inevitably await them if we baselessly entail hereditary bondage upon them. In our native land, in defense of the freedom which is our birthright, which we have enjoyed till this late violation of it, for the protection of our property against violence actually offered, we most solemnly before God and the world declare that, exerting the utmost energy of those powers which our beneficent Creator hath graciously bestowed upon us, we will, in defiance of every hazard, with unabating firmness and perseverance, employ for the preservation of our liberties, being with one mind resolved to die free men rather than to live as slaves." And I thought, just to kind of wrap things up for this week, I wanted to just share something with you guys about my state's motto. Because a lot of people know the motto of my state because it's the most badass state motto that exists. Live free or die is a badass state motto. But it's actually an abbreviation of the full quote. Live free or die is not the full quote. The New Hampshire motto derives from a letter written by General John Stark on July 31st, 1809. Stark was a New Hampshire-born war hero, having served as an officer in the British Army during the French and Indian War and a major general in the Continental Army during the American Revolution. Stark led troops at the Battle of Bunker Hill and later at the Battle of Bennington, where a strategic victory earned him the nickname the Hero of Bennington. 32 years later, Stark, then in failing health, was invited to a reunion of the Battle of Bennington veterans, but he was not well enough to travel. He sent a letter in reply, noting that he'd never forget the troops he commanded in Bennington. They were men that had not learned the art of submission, nor had they been trained in the art of war. But our astonishing success taught the enemies of liberty that undisciplined free men are superior to veteran slaves. As an afterword to the letter, Stark included a brief passage to be read as a toast to the veterans. Live free or die. Death is not the greatest of evils. Death is not the greatest of evils. Joe Biden can talk about protecting the unvaccinated all he wants, but death is not the greatest of evils. So anytime someone says to you, live free or die, follow up and say, death is not the greatest of evils. All right, guys, that's all we have for effed up news of the week this week. Again, I will be going live in my locals in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to be talking about, I did a stream on Twitch last night where I debated a bunch of leftists about gender issues. I also did some knitting. But I want to talk about different strategies that I think are always powerful in using when you're debating leftists. And they are strategies that I've used last night. They're strategies that I've used previously. I'm going to be discussing it in my locals community. So you can join me there in just a few minutes. kb.locals.com. You can join for free. You can watch the live stream for free. All you have to do is become a member. But if you do want to support the work I'm doing, you can do it for $5 a month. You can do it for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can do it for a one-time donation, which always helps out. Join me every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Effed Up News, where I'll be running down these stories again. And I will see you guys in a few minutes in locals. Take care. Have a great rest of your weekend.